Hello, thanks for joining a new video. This time we review the Nubia Neo 3 GT 5G. Let's begin. This device is definitely targeted at gamers, and we can see that in several ways. But first, let me mention that its launch price in Mexico was 5,999 pesos, which is approximately $310. However, keep in mind that prices here differ from those elsewhere. Interestingly, this market segment isn't crowded with many competitors. You will find both pricier and cheaper options, but this particular segment doesn't have a lot of rivals. This device, you are going to be able to find it in free market and Amazon, so it can compete in a good way in price due to its mainly online distribution. As against, it would be a bit complicated to find it in physical stores. Let's start describing it physically. On the front, we are going to find sufficiently reduced bezels in the price. I think it competes perfectly, although it does not come with some special Gorilla Glass or something similar. Then we could put on. The durability or drop resistance of this glass is somewhat in doubt, so we must exercise caution, just as we would with any other type of glass. On the right side, we will discover special triggers that can be used and taken advantage of while playing, in the classic red magic style. We will discuss them in greater depth in the gaming section, yet even from the design it captures attention. Additionally, we will discover a textured red power button and volume buttons. At the top there is solely a microphone, whereas on the left side there are no buttons at all. The thickness measures approximately 8.5 millimeters, although the manufacturer does not provide more precise information on this aspect. At the bottom we will find a grill designed for the speaker. Next to it there's a USB-C port, followed by the presence of a microphone, and finally we have the tray. Interestingly, in this particular case, the tray has only one slot available for a SIM card. The other slot appears to be locked, which suggests that it might vary depending on different distributors and countries. The back of the device will certainly be the most eye-catching part for gamers, not only because it features some unique textures that have various patterns like carbon fiber and others. Also, we'll find a section with mini LEDs featuring RGB lights, offering versatile uses. An area simulates a fan with a spinning effect and an interesting strip. Configure lights to turn on during gameplay or sync with sound and music. You could also use these rear LEDs serve as a type of notification LED. They are used to indicate incoming calls, display the battery charge status, and also for alarms. In every aspect, you have the ability to configure its effects. You can choose whether you prefer constant lighting, a breathing effect, flickering, or even a strobe effect. Additionally, it allows you to select from 5 different color options for how it will light up. This specifically applies to the number on the back, although it's worth noting that this is the section that lights up the least brightly. Nonetheless, it's quite nice to have this level of customization available to you. So, to sum it up, the bottom LED strip is illuminated in a blue color. The half circle that mimics a fan is displayed in white, while the customizable RGB element is the number. For gamers, this feature is definitely a visually striking aspect. Additionally, you'll notice that the cameras are designed in an octagonal shape, deviating slightly from the conventional design of typical devices. Interestingly, on the back, there is a slogan that reads, "Win more games," which is the Red Magic slogan they've adopted. Keep in mind that Red Magic is a brand under Nubia, and Nubia itself is a brand under ZTE, which means they appear to share several aspects in this respect. The back cover is made of plastic, so it should be quite durable, and the device is equipped with an IP54 rating, which means it can handle some splashes, but nothing more than that. It won't particularly excel in terms of toughness. Lastly, it is available in interstellar grey and electro yellow colors, allowing you to select your preferred option. The screen is quite large, measuring 6.8 inches, and it features a resolution of 1080 by 2392 pixels. With this gives us a pixel density of 386 pixels per inch. Overall then, we could say that we are looking at a screen with a good level of detail. Both text and multimedia content that you get to see will be displayed well clear. In addition, it offers a MOL technology, that is, it has very intense colors and very high contrasts, although we are obviously not in front of a high-end screen or something like that. Then, even through the software, it does not provide various color calibration options. It only offers a manual adjustment for the screen's color temperature, should you prefer colors that are a bit warmer or cooler. However, overall, I believe it's a positive display. In fact, it truly stands out because it boasts a maximum brightness of 1300 nits, which appears extremely intense, allowing for excellent viewing in bright sunlight. Interestingly, the screen does support HDR content, but so far I've only been able to get YouTube to display this type of content. Neither Instagram nor Netflix and probably other apps seem to show compatibility with these screen capabilities either. However, given the price range, I believe that's to be expected. As for the lower brightness, I feel it's sufficiently low for comfortable viewing. Remember that it comes complemented with dark mode, reading mode and night mode, and also has the option of extra dimming to further lower the brightness of the screen. Then I think in any scenario, yes, you will find a comfortable viewing. And to top it off, it has 120 Hz that offers super fluid movements, both navigating with the interface and in some game content and more. So the screen, wherever you see it, I think it fulfills perfectly. Let's discuss sound. It has stereo, good for gamers to know shot directions, though quality isn't great. The main speaker is the bottom one, with more power, and slightly more low frequencies, yet typically the mid frequencies are the loudest, so the sound isn't great, at least by default. Through software, we find different sound presets such as Smart Select, Music, Movie, and Game. Personally, I prefer to use the Movie preset at all times for better quality sound. In the Music preset, you can supposedly access a 10-band equalizer, but I was testing it and it doesn't seem to modify the sound at any time. So that could be fixed. Maybe with an update, a working equalizer would be better, but for now the Movie preset improves the sound a lot. We did a small test, but remember, it's different live. In the DTS sound settings, it includes a selector to customize audio for headphones, car audio, and other presets, so also this feature can provide assistance. One positive aspect is that it enables us to manage the volume separately for each application, which is quite beneficial. Additionally, it allows multiple applications to play multimedia sounds simultaneously. I find these two options to be extremely useful, as they are not commonly available on most cell phones. Therefore, it is important to emphasize this as a significant advantage. Consider that it does not bring headphone jack. I think this is an absence that will weigh heavily, because being a cell phone aimed at gamers, the ideal would be to have integrated the jack to enjoy audio without latency. Instead, you must use some USB-C adapter if you do not want latency or headphones with this port. But well, for music we will find support for high-resolution codecs such as aptX and LLAC. In this case, it incorporates two microphones, one above and one below. Let's hear a test.
Esta es una prueba de audio de los micrófonos del Nubia Neo 3 GT 5G en un ambiente tranquilo.
As you may have noticed, the microphones perform well enough. Let's listen now to a test in a super noisy environment. As you could notice, the audio loses a bit of resolution and becomes slightly saturated in these environments, but it is no disaster. Finally, in this block, this device incorporates a vibration motor in the Z-axis. So the feeling is not going to be ultra premium, but curiously, if you have an intensity adjustment, So let's say it's one of the best of the Z-axis motors, but not quite up to the quality of the X-axis motors. Considering it's a device aimed at gamers, we would prefer it to have an X-axis motor. However, we can understand the choice, as it seems to be an effort to keep the price more affordable. The front camera boasts a 16 megapixels resolution with an f2.0 aperture. Here, there's no fast aperture method for the camera. Note that the front camera has a basic agility. It doesn't give us such a quick capture, and naturally, it does not have the burst mode available. What we will discover is an option to show some filters in real time. Additionally, it includes a beauty mode with just one slider, and in the settings you can enable smile capture. You can also configure how the volume buttons behave and make your selection if you want to touch any area of the screen to take the picture, but as you can see, it does not include gesture detection, so comes a little more limited in that aspect. It is evident that this will not be a cell phone specifically designed for taking selfies or anything similar. The selfies it takes are simply adequate for its price range. You will notice that they can compete quite well, although it is not a specialist in this particular aspect. Fortunately, it has a decent level of amplitude, allowing for a good framing in backlit scenarios. The preview is not well optimized, however, as you can see after capturing the picture. It attempts to balance the highlights and shadows effectively, yet it still appears somewhat overexposed in the highlights area, and especially in terms of the color. You will definitely notice that it's quite odd. Its precision is quite low, particularly in backlit settings. In night conditions, being near a light source should still yield positive results. I've been impressed with its performance even in backlit night scenes. However, using the screen as a flash tends to worsen the picture. We found that night portrait photos with the front camera were of good quality. Clearly, it isn't perfect, but for its price range, it competes well. However, we found that it struggles to keep objects in focus, so I maintain that it's a basic camera. On the back, we find 27mm camera with f1.8 aperture and autofocus with a 50 megapixel sensor. The other octagon is decoration, and in the other octagon is placed the flash. So again, it is clear that the camera will not be protagonist in this cell phone, but consider that it offers us a scene of 35, 50 and even 81mm. In a moment we see the results. Note that the device again is not very agile in continuous captures, and if we keep pressed, the shutter allows unlimited bursts, though it's somewhat slow. During our test to capture the number 3, we observed that it takes nearly half a second for the device to effectively capture it. In the burst notes, I believe the behavior is favorable. Although we notice that the animation doesn't seem to respond quickly, I think the captures are done well. However, they might occasionally become slightly disorganized. Within the burst view, note that we will find an artificial intelligence button with which we can enable the enhancement of our photographs. We also have filters and effects to preview. In real time, by touching the screen, we are able to adjust both the exposure and the focus. However, if we desire something more advanced, we can enter the expert mode. In this mode, we have control over the shutter speed, which can be set up to 1 second. We also have the ability to adjust the white balance, set the ISO up to 9600, manage the focus, and tweak the exposure compensation. Additionally, we can utilize interval capture, and we have the option to lock the focus, exposure, or white balance as needed. Be sure to check the histogram. In this case, you can't take raw shots, but you can access presets. With one tap, load your preferred settings. Like other brand devices, it includes special modes like multiple exposure, monochrome, or sports, useful for specific moments and smart scenes. Notice that it is not able to detect QR codes from the main interface, but it offers access to Google Lens directly next to the shutter button, and here you can do these actions. For documents, you won't notice that it has anything integrated into the main interface either, so you have to log in. Specifically to document mode. From here you can scan, though without an ultra-wide camera you must raise the phone quite a bit. Note it will detect and trim edges. And you can apply black and white or color effects but can't add more pages for a PDF. Let's check the results. Here you see the main camera. The photography appears to just suffice, not specialist level. You quickly notice it lacks color accuracy and dynamic range. Also keep in mind that despite the 35mm perspective, which gives us the 35mm perspective, actually starts to lose detail, so it doesn't maintain optical quality. With the 50mm setting, we notice exactly the same thing. You can see immediately that it is a low-quality digital zoom, so at 5x you still notice this. However, even though it lacks an ultra-wide camera, take a look at what we managed to achieve using the panoramic mode. I believe that's definitely a positive aspect. Although the panoramic mode isn't extremely advanced due to the limited dynamic range it displays, it still offers high definition. Here's another carousel for you to observe how it performs across various focal lengths. As you can notice, it isn't a photography expert since it struggles to maintain a high level of detail consistently. The maximum zoom capability is 10x, however. If we want to be truly honest, it should actually be 5x. In scenarios where there is backlighting, the preview doesn't appear to be very well optimized. But the photograph's result, in my opinion, attempts to balance both light and shadow effectively. Although in this particular case, the shadow area is the one that ended up with slightly less light than what would be ideal. But as you might notice when you zoom in, it seems to detect the face a bit better, allowing it to give the face a little more priority. But we confirm it won't be expert in backlit scenes. Curiously, at night, it's also not an expert, which confirms it will be a device primarily aimed at gaming rather than photography, although it can handle just the essentials. For macro photography, this is about as close as you can get, and I believe it's sufficient for capturing a decent photo. Keep in mind that attempting to zoom in will result in a loss of detail as it doesn't preserve optical quality. Now, here you are viewing an image in high resolution mode where supposedly we might gain better detail, yet it doesn't apply to real life. The photograph effectively has a resolution of 8160 x 6144 pixels, so it is 50 megapixels, but the level of detail is not seen. Resolution. In well-lit environments, moving scenes will yield good results. Lastly, portrait photography has surprisingly performed well. The bokeh effect in the background looks nice when objects are detected, though not perfectly in the gaps, but for its price, it performs well in this aspect. For video recording, we will find 4K at 30 frames per second as maximum quality, something that does become outstanding. For the price range, it's not very common, although the recommended option and the default setting will be to record in full HD. It's important to note that when you're recording video, you have this convenient slider for zooming in and out. Additionally, there's a button to take pictures, another button to pause and then resume your recording, and one more button to turn on the flashlight. You don't need to stop the video recording to do this, but if you want to switch to the front camera, then you will need to stop recording. And on the front camera, we actually don't have the option for 4K. However, interestingly enough, we do find a beauty mode that is compatible with full HD resolution. Naturally, in this particular case, we do not. We'll find a professional recording mode, but it has a blog mode. That includes templates you can complete later. Just click to see the progress of each scene. It automatically adds movements, so no need for video editing later. Simply fill in the details and you have a finished video. It's simple but appreciated, and it also integrates the multi-camera mode, which I'll show you shortly. Interestingly, it lets you record a video is combined as multiple videos with separate files. However, let's take a look at the result. Even though it can record in 4K, it actually uses a low bit rate, so you'll notice some graininess at times. This once more confirms that providing top quality video recording or photography isn't their main focus, although it does offer decent resolution. In backlit scenes, note that it doesn't seem to have a good balance of light and shadow. And in fact, from this clip, you realize that stabilization is going to be a problem. But note that it will give priority to removing faces. It struggles somewhat to maintain focus in challenging lighting conditions, so I really wouldn't suggest using this phone for recording purposes, unless you plan to record solely in ideal lighting situations. During nighttime, you will observe that there is a significant amount of noise and grain visible in the scene. Fortunately, it does manage to gather a decent amount of light and retains a good level of detail, but it does come with the drawback of having quite intense graininess. The device struggles to adequately balance the light sources it detects, and if none of these sources are visible in the frame, you'll observe significant noise and grain, leading to unsatisfactory results. At night, I expected stabilization issues, and indeed, this is confirmed. Notice that when recording in 4K, even a simple walk exaggerates the movement, and running only amplifies this effect, making it even more noticeable. So it's clear that this is a 100% cell phone focused on the gaming experience. Watch now how it performs at zoom. It seems to me that still at close range zoom it's doing well. But as you approach the maximum, it creates a gelatinous effect. And lacking stabilization makes things much more challenging, though I think the image quality remains good. Focusing can become tricky depending on the lighting conditions, so it won't be a comfortable experience. You'll need to keep tapping the screen to maintain focus, as the autofocus isn't great. This device lacks slow motion, but it does offer fast motion, though the low bitrate makes the video seem lower quality. Interestingly, you can adjust the speed from 15x to 1800x, but it's not stabilized. For recording walking or dynamic scenes, the result isn't great, but for landscapes it could be interesting, though the low bitrate means the video quality isn't high. Regarding the front camera, the outcome will also be straightforward. Once more, there's no stabilization, and since it's not in 4K, the level of detail isn't as high. There's not much precision in color rendition, and in scenes with backlighting, the device will prioritize illuminating the face, completely sacrificing the areas with more backlight. During nighttime, you will also notice a significant presence of noise and grain, and even some pink pigmentation in the darker areas. However, I believe this is still within what one can expect for this price range. Luckily, it has a good light input. What surprised me is that it includes the recording mode of... With it, you can show both the rear camera and the front camera, which is something that not all devices in this range incorporate. In addition, you can place the image wherever you want without any kind of stop, and in this case, keeps the autofocus enabled. But I was saying that it is a focus that comes. To battle a lot, then it will be a little difficult to adjust, although it comes with the zoom locked, so you do not have so much dynamism in your scenes. What I appreciate is that you can change from picture-in-picture mode to split screen mode without stopping the video recording, making it a competitive feature in its range. Within the software, we have Android 15, and running on it is my OS 15. This is a custom system developed by ZTE. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a clear update policy. At best, I believe it might receive an update to Android 16, but I doubt it will go beyond that. This could be seen as a potential weak point. However, let me share some additional features it offers. For instance, it includes various themes that you can apply, and there is even a Free Fire theme available. For the fans of this game, the customization alters the wallpaper and somewhat modifies the shape of the icons. However, it isn't an overly aggressive customization. For instance, regarding the lock screen, you'll also discover some covers here that you might consider using. However, they are not particularly aggressive either. For instance, we can change the clock style, including its typography, in an appealing manner. Additionally, we have access to a selection of widgets and can add a signature to the lock screen. Nevertheless, there are no special effects available for the background images or anything similar to that. Interestingly, it also includes this feature called Super Lock that will constantly change your lock screen background, something that I personally dislike, but here you can turn it off. You can also individually change the icons in case you want to apply some effects, but the truth is that there is not so much customization. You can customize animations on the home screen plus icon shape and color. This is available in the system's entire palette. On the main screen, you have the option to choose whether you prefer having an app drawer or if you want everything displayed as large icons. Additionally, you can turn on or off the Z board. This is basically a home screen that provides us with some content recommendations. An interesting feature is the function that allows the screen to remain on as long as it detects that you are looking at it. A definite positive point is the one-handed mode, allowing us to choose the behavior, full screen, reduced or half screen. I'm not sure anyone prefers it adjusted, but both options are available. It also features easy touch, providing a floating button to add more options within reach. Now you can customize various options. Here, we also find the active island displaying some information. For instance, when you start a voice recording, it minimizes here. A single tap brings you back to the app, but if you want more buttons, press and hold in this area to reveal additional options, making it an interactive island. Active, it not only provides visual cues, but also displays low battery alerts, timers, headphone battery status when connected, and even while playing music, these options are accessible here. It's definitely a plus. Additionally, it includes traditional gestures and motions such as double tapping to turn on the screen, and the same action to turn it off. You can swipe 3 fingers to take screenshots, and it also features the wider capture option. Furthermore, in the screenshot editor, you have the ability to censor certain content. If you want, you can access other additional settings such as even shaking the phone to turn on the flashlight. However, it's important to note that you must be on the lock screen for this feature to work. And if you are not on the lock screen, this gesture unfortunately will not function. So make sure you are on the lock screen to utilize this feature effectively. The device also comes with a split screen mode feature. Please note that to activate it, you must first access the list of recent applications. Once you're there, you need to press this specific button, and then you can proceed to open any other application you desire. In this scenario, it enables you to adjust the space allocated to each of the applications. Additionally, you have the option to rearrange their order or even open another application without having to exit the one currently at the top. Also note that when you exit, these applications will remain linked. Pay attention because it does not have floating Windows execution from this interface. So in general, we could say that it is a somewhat simple operating system. Clearly, it will not be one of its advantages, considering that it also has no promises for artificial intelligence. In this case, it integrates few functions, but there is presence of some options. For example, it comes with a translation application, which also lets you change the view for both to see the translation. But not only is it a simple application, it also has a per call implementation. Notice that when you are on a call, this floating AI translation button appears, so you can click it and just assign the necessary permissions. And now what I'm trying to say to you is, shows up right away inside a bubble, and it is being translated into the other language. Interestingly, In this case, I'm not listening to the translation, even though the other person does hear the translation, but at least I can read in the bubbles what is being said and translate it. So it's a tool that seems useful. Those are the only features that Nubia has developed artificial intelligence for this device. But well, it also brings Gemini, which as you know is a Google voice assistant that we can enable. A swipe from a corner to chat and ask questions. In fact, we could even share our screen or share our camera to address any doubts about what we are seeing. So it acts as a remarkably intelligent assistant. Additionally, from here we can also initiate a call, just as if you are calling a friend. In security, there are also few options. It includes a fingerprint reader inside the screen that is optical, so it emits intense light for recognition. It permits up to 5 different registrations. Since it's integrated into the screen using software, we have the flexibility to modify the animation during the unlocking process. Additionally, it enables the quick launching of applications by simply holding your finger on the sensor. This allows you to execute some shortcuts swiftly upon release. This feature is incredibly useful and convenient for everyday use. Additionally, it features facial recognition, but it's limited to 2 dimensions. On the bright side, it includes the My Vault function, allowing you to securely store applications, files, and various types of sensitive content. This is quite similar to Samsung's Secure Folder, all safeguarded with either your fingerprint or a password. Furthermore, it offers the option to clone applications, though this is currently restricted to social and messaging apps. However, this is already a beneficial feature to have. The remaining functions will be the ones that Google has integrated as native system features, and these are developed for all Android devices. Interestingly, it seems that the app pinning mode is not included, but all the other features are there. In the description, I have left a video where I explain all these functions in detail. The battery capacity is 6,000 mAh, which theoretically seems like a big above average battery, but in my test it lasted below average, just barely managing to exceed the 4H in my foreground draining test, while in the background, it was actually even slightly less than that, and it kept on closing all the time repeatedly. The background drainer, it features an extremely aggressive power management system. This system continuously shuts down applications it identifies as consuming excessive power in the background. And however, despite these measures, it still doesn't manage to achieve remarkable battery autonomy. Consider that its performance is akin to having a battery with a capacity of 4,500 mAh. In my YouTube test with screen brightness at 50% during, that's just around 11 hours, making it one of the worst performing devices in this test. So, don't rely solely on the 6,000 mAh rating, as this battery truly doesn't last very long. You will likely need to activate the power saving mode on a daily basis. Fortunately, it also features an ultra power saving mode, which can be incredibly helpful during emergencies when you really need it. Now, in the box, they provide you with a theoretical 80 watts charger. It seems like this is one of its strongest features. However, take note that it only reached 34 watts during the initial charging stage. In just 15 minutes, it charged up to 20%, and in 30 minutes, it reached 46%. The complete charging process was finished in 77 minutes. So, it's not exactly an interesting charger, but you can consider it to be around 40 watts at most. Fortunately, it features smart charging, which means you can leave it plugged in and charging all night long if you're desperate and don't want to wait during the day for it to charge a bit slower. It will finish charging right when you're about to wake up. It also includes a charge lock feature, which is really useful if you need to keep your phone plugged in at all times. However, something even more beneficial when you plan to play for a long duration is the charge separation feature. So power goes straight to the components, bypassing the battery to prevent heat and wear. Therefore, at the software level, it provides effective mechanisms that effectively complement the hardware, which has not been very efficient. In connectivity, it supports 5 Haitian GORDAS networks, which is good, but lacks a data blocking mode for Wi-Fi only app access. Speaking of Wi-Fi, it's not very fast, offering Wi-Fi 5, so the experience is somewhat limited yet understandable for the price. It also includes Bluetooth 5 and NFC to make mobile payments pay attention because it does not have FM radio. But if you can connect accessories through the USB-C port, however, if you want to project the screen, you must do it wirelessly. In this case, the projection is in mirror mode, not as advanced as in Red Magic, although at least it allows you to hide the notifications in the projection. In this case, also integrates Android Auto. As for sensors, it includes an accelerometer, geomagnetic field sensor, bore sight, and gyroscope, all useful for games, plus a physical proximity sensor to complete the set. The ecosystem of Nubia is relatively small. Gradually, they are introducing various devices, such as their new tablets, You might also come across some headsets and similar items. However, regrettably, they lack a wide range of interconnectivity technologies that would allow for advanced interaction across their entire device portfolio. Consequently, they rely more heavily on technologies from Google and Android, like Quick Share or Google Fast Pair, to facilitate these interactions. It additionally does not provide any advanced services or anything similar, relying completely on Google Drive, Google Home, and all Google services. At best, it offers its own web browser, which is actually made to show you advertisements. So, in reality, the ecosystem is quite limited, and in this aspect, there is nothing to boast about. On the contrary, it stands as one of its weakest aspects. Let's evaluate the performance of the Nubia Neo 3 GT 5G. It features the Unisoc T90-100 processor, which is manufactured using a 6nm process. Its highest frequency reaches 2.7 GHz. Here, we are opening multiple applications to assess its performance. It includes 8 GB of RAM and 256 GB of storage. In this scenario, it took an average of 3.3 seconds to open each application, which is quite reasonable considering the price. Now let's see how it behaves with these 8 GB of RAM that integrates, which is a good capacity in theory. Plus, the operating system is quite simple, so it should not consume so much. Resources are stable and reboots are noticeable when returning to apps. The device maintains good performance with multiple apps open, though animations may not be as smooth. If we were to find ourselves in front of a strong point, the device maintains its good performance. It does not lose its capability, even when you have multiple applications open simultaneously. Perhaps it is the animations are somewhat awkward, and you'll need to wait for them to complete before you can interact with the devices once more. So you just need to be patient with the animations. However, if you manage the animations properly, you'll be able to interact with them again. Ensures a consistently smooth experience. Even if you have as many as 16 apps open at the same time, which is extremely positive and likely one of its most significant strengths within this price range, because we are truly witnessing an exceptionally good experience overall. Now let's see how it performs in some feeds. For example, here Instagram, we are seeing that it does not lose performance. The only thing I noticed is that sometimes it takes a little longer than expected to download the content, so that is what sometimes slows it down a little. As I already told you in the contact section, the Wi-Fi modem of this device appears to operate at a rather slow pace. In instances like this, we find ourselves waiting for additional content to load, and the device struggles for quite an extended period in this aspect. However, the reality is that patience is required when it becomes a bit sluggish in downloading. Despite this, it generally offers a relatively smooth experience. I believe we can confidently say that its performance is undoubtedly one of its strong points. Alongside its 8 GB of RAM, it also includes 12 GB of extended RAM. I personally don't recommend it, but it does offer excellent storage capacity. Activated. It also has 256 GB of storage, which is quite a good capacity. In this instance, it provides some information that assists you in understanding what occupies more space on the system. However, it doesn't offer a straightforward cleaner, at least not from this point. Though from the home screen, you will notice that there is a feature named Cleaning Space. Although at the same time, it will display some advertising, but that's okay. It is a tool included within the system. You need to provide it with the necessary permissions to function properly. Here it suggests this. For instance, when it comes to image cleaning, it displays the captures and the similar images, which can be really helpful. There are certainly occasions where we end up taking numerous photos of the same subject, and this feature allows you to easily access and delete the duplicates. Additionally, it offers video cleanup capabilities. However, it lacks a compressor and generally a filter for large files and other features, so I believe it still provides the essential tools to assist you in freeing up space. However, for those who are more technically inclined, let's conduct a test to measure the speed of this storage unit. As you can see, it achieved a reading speed of 878 megabytes per second and a writing speed of 779 megabytes per second. This indicates that it is indeed a notably slow storage solution, which could possibly result in slower application installations or, more broadly, cause the device to perform less smoothly in certain processes. Let's do a real-life test. The device records in 4K, so let's test it. When considering resolution, keep in mind that we are watching a video with a total length of 1 minute, composed of clips that were recorded using this cell phone, and that concludes it, taking nearly 2 minutes. This device is certainly not designed to be overly powerful for 4K video editing. Considering the cost, testing with full HD would have been more fitting, yet it appears to me that the combination of slow RAM and storage, along with a processor that doesn't excel in raw power, has led us to this outcome. Let's now discuss the games, which are the main highlight of this cell phone. Notice how it incorporates the game space, essentially the same suite found in Red Magic. This is advantageous because it offers excellent tools. Here we can see the games we've installed. Additionally, note that we can customize the center to alter the aesthetics slightly if we prefer a different background. Here we also access the special Nubia character, not Mora, Red Magic, here I don't really know the name, but let's configure it. I think it's called Demi. And here you can customize a little bit of the appearance and some other things. In fact, it can appear on your home screen or perhaps during your alarms. Additionally, we will encounter another button right here that allows you to customize the device's performance individually for each game. Therefore, if you desire maximum power for a specific game, you have the option to do so, and also you can manage other settings as needed. You have the option to configure the video quality of the replays, which I will be showing you shortly. Here, you can adjust how your installed games are displayed. Let's launch a game so you can see its options, and then I'll discuss performance. Notice the two semi-transparent bars here, sliding them gives access to various tools. It's just like what Red Magic provides, making it quite impressive. We can change the view, noting one option allows a more sensitive joystick depending on its placement in the game. Alter it and tweak the sensitivity so that the movements become significantly faster. Additionally, there's a feature known as screen extraction that enables us to place a map in a different location. Interestingly, this is something I hadn't noticed before in Red Magic. Perhaps my memory isn't serving me well, but for instance, we can specify that we want this section to actually appear elsewhere in a slightly larger or smaller size. It's quite interesting, you just accept and is adjusting the position and visibility of a certain box or an indicator within our game environment. There is an additional feature known as the Artificial Intelligence Trigger. This allows you to take a snapshot of your game at a particular moment and then instruct it to recognize when your game displays a similar snapshot. When this happens, it can automatically activate a series of buttons and taps, giving you a competitive edge during certain moments in your game. Furthermore, there is another option available that can generate random numbers for you. This feature of the range that you indicate, and this is where it appears so that you simply press a button and then you receive this answer. There's another free format option that lets us have an ultra-wide or square perspective or even portrait mode. Let's enable ultra-wide mode, you'll need to restart the game. Some games adapt better than others, but it gives you a more original viewing space for a wider panorama. Keep in mind that you also have the option to adjust the position to direct the entire view upwards. Additionally, thanks to the rest of the Red Magic tools, you can move the buttons to the bottom if you find it necessary. I want to remind you that with this button, you will be able to link the touch triggers to the virtual buttons. Notice that in this particular situation, they are being activated in a visually simpler way, and we can modify their behavior. For example, in this specific instance, this is a distinctive feature. However, if we choose to keep it pressed, it will stay activated until I press it once more to turn it off. There's also the rapid fire option that you notice, which lets us hold down and effectively press multiple times. This is ideal for quick shots and has other functions like motion detection. There's a double operation feature that lets us press two zones simultaneously or perform separate operations one by one. One operation occurs when touching the button and another happens when releasing the trigger. You can activate a macro to perform multiple touches and gestures on the screen with just one tap, making the experience really impressive in this aspect. Allow me to move to a different part of the game so I can demonstrate additional options. It includes this data panel designed to display the game's frames per second and some extra information. However, it appears that in this instance, it isn't providing us with much data, as everything is still showing zeros. You also have a peripheral control center that lets you see linked accessories, and there's an auxiliary line you can draw on top of your screen. This allows you to customize specific areas that you want to reference. Additionally, there is a stopwatch available, which is particularly useful for certain games where you need to keep a close watch on the screen. When you have new power or similar useful for shooting games, it comes with a fixed size you can set. You can customize color, style, size, and opacity. It's also useful to know where you're aiming. This is the place where you can set up the macros. Notice that you simply add them and you have the option to record. In this instance, I'm going to create this macro, and that's it. Now I'm going to instruct it to stop recording. Watch closely, I can give it any name I want, and I am able to place this indicator on the screen by selecting it. That's all there is to it. So, when I press this button, observe how it immediately performs all the gestures that I recorded earlier. It's a fast way to perform multiple actions with one touch. We will also find available the hunting mode that is very useful for these games, where suddenly the environment becomes very dark. Note that highlights the details so that it is much easier to find the details. There's some opponent movement. Scout mode lets you create a magnifying glass for a closer view, though you don't. There's such a distinct and precise look to it. Additionally, you have the key remapping feature, which, as I mentioned to you earlier as well, it is quite beneficial for us to reposition certain buttons, so please note that in this particular case, I am able to select a button to be in the desired position, and it will indeed activate another button on the interface. It even includes a continuous click option, although after testing it, it appears that it is not activating very much. However, as I mentioned, the advantage here is that now with this button, I am actually enabling the jump button. You can place the buttons as desired, but it doesn't work with ultra-wide modes, free view or forced portrait. And ultimately, you gain access to a sound equalizer, which allows you to slightly customize and enhance your gaming experience. Additionally, on the other side, you will discover access to the system controls. There is even a convenient button that enables us to constantly have the device's performance information visible, including details like the frame rate per second, the network connection status, the battery level, and the duration of your gaming session. We also have the option of using this button for replays. Once you activate it, keep in mind that if you are making an impressive play but didn't record the screen, you can simply press this floating button to have the replay recorded. It's important to note that this isn't a full gameplay recording, but rather a customizable fragment. You can adjust it in the section I showed you earlier. Moreover, you will also find the option here to record the entire screen. Lock rotation, optimize RAM, block touch gestures, activate load separation, set alarms, project the screen suspended if the game downloads content to save battery, take screenshots, block calls, and control the real lights as seen in the reflection. So, as you can see, it offers a wide range of options to enjoy a super advanced gaming experience, something we usually don't find in other cell phones. Or we might find it in much more expensive phones, like the entire Red Magic family. That's its most attractive feature. Now, let's take a look at what the performance experience will be like. Well, before we get into that, I'll let you know that for screen recording, you can configure the audio source from which you want to record the screen. Video quality defaults to medium for performance. You can choose to show touches. We begin with Call of Duty, where by default, it is set to low quality at a medium rate. It's important to note that we can actually increase it to medium quality at a high rate. We will utilize this setting as it is the highest possible. Keep in mind it doesn't offer extensive support for special effects, yet it is understandable given the price range. All the games we play are run with the Rise mode enabled, which is designed for maximum power capabilities. In this case, the experience has been excellent. We found great stability with almost no low peaks if you're not recording the screen. However, when recording, you might notice some low peaks. For gameplays, it would be best to lower the graphics quality. But if you're not doing gameplays, the gaming experience will be great without much heating. Next, we played PUBG. In this case, by default, it comes in HD at a high quality. We can even choose the HDR graphics at an ultra rate, which is outstanding. And if we lower the graphics to the lowest level, we can even enable the extreme rate. In this case, we gave priority to HDR graphics and ultra rate. Then again, we could say that it delivers in terms of graphics compatibility and the overall experience is good. Here, as you can observe, it achieved an average of 40 frames per second, once more with graphics that are nearly. I would emphasize that if you record the screen, you might experience a few more dropouts, but it does not mean the device is constantly freezing or anything of that nature. Overall, the experience has been quite good, and the fact that it provides access to triggers and all the software tools I mentioned earlier for games really enhances and makes the experience much more enjoyable. Well complemented, it also 4083 square millimeters vapor chamber, which I believe aids in cooling it effectively. In this instance, the temperature was again managed quite well. For SpongeBob, we reduced the resolution, yet kept the quality intact. On average, at 60 frames per second, the experience was positive, nothing to criticize. Then the note is simply to know that you must adjust the graphics quality based on the price, and you don't want to conduct exaggerated tests of. It can be demanding since it's not a high-end processor. Keep in mind, this is an entry-level processor. Despite that, it is quite well optimized. It performs well in its category, even though it doesn't belong to the high-end class. Even with low-quality graphics, you can play smoothly without issues. Finally, we played Genshin Impact, which by default is in very low graphics quality. We kept it there, but we upgraded to 60 frames per second. Although we disabled some additional effects, and in this case, we did notice more jitter and jitter. Our graph has some fluctuations, yet it remains smoothly playable. Smooth and loose, even though the lowest peak reached 7. But that usually happens only at rare moments. Does indeed continue to maintain a smooth and fluid sensation while playing, even recording the screen. The key is the software enhancing the experience. It may not allow super high graphic settings for extended periods like Red Magic, but seeing all the software features like the triggers, the hunting mode, the repositioning of the buttons, and any more tools that I showed you a moment ago, the new features make it feel like you're using this device, much more advanced than what you would find in this range. In conclusion, it is definitely a device aimed at gamers that gamers will enjoy. It has everything a gamer could ask for in this price range: good screen with good colors and a lot of fluidity, stereo sound to know where you are getting caught. The function for charge separation allows you to play while the charger is plugged in without causing any harm to the battery. Additionally, the full Red Magic software experience is transferred to this device, which also includes touch triggers that activate the virtual buttons. Enable ultra panoramic mode for wider view, move buttons, record macros, and use advanced functions, plus backlights for display. While you're playing games, the processor, although not very powerful, does allow for smooth gameplay with lower graphic settings. Where does it fall short? Well, in areas where gamers might not be as demanding. The front camera is not very good and the rear camera isn't great either. Video recording is also lacking. However, I insist these are aspects where gamers might not be particularly interested. One area where you might find yourself a bit disappointed is with the battery. Even though it has a capacity of 6,000 mAh, it seems to give more of a performance of a 4,500 battery, or even less milliamp hours will depend a lot on your activities. But for gaming, the battery is not going to perform as well. However, I think it's a very solid bet for this market if you're a gamer and don't want to spend that much money. For the moment, we have reached the end of this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, you can tell us, and we'll see you next time.